morning, everybody. 17 minutes after the hour. Welcome to the Sunrise Show. Thanks so much for being on the program, joining us for the program. And on the phone with us, Scott Paul. He's the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, based out of Washington, D.C. They're a great Scott, I'm going to call you kind of a watchdog group because you do such a great job at sniffing around and finding the real truth on manufacturing in America. And you're holding the president feet to the fire. Only 376,000 manufacturing jobs have been brought back to America, and we're holding President Obama to the fact that he said 1 million. But interesting, the jobs report, this Ipsos, this poll that came out, and Scott, thanks so much for being on the program this morning.
It's my pleasure, Craig. It is an auspicious day to be talking about this with the trade debate front and center in Capitol Hill, the jobs numbers very fresh, and the president visiting your fine state today.
It is, and he's up at Nike in Beaverton, and it's interesting, the headline this morning, Obama stirs up a bee's nest on his trade report. I don't think it's going very well. You've mentioned currency manipulation, but let's get right to this poll. What are people saying? There were, 1,687 registered voters were polled online. What did they have to say about what's going on in America?
Yeah, so it's a good question. And so Ipsos is a national polling firm, and this is a nationwide poll with the same, about the same number of folks that are done for all the polls you see in newspapers and all that. And this trade debate has started, as you mentioned, so whether or not to give the president authority to negotiate new trade agreements, one of those trade agreements being the Trans-Pacific Partnership, very controversial, cover 40% of the world's GDP, but it could put a lot of American jobs at risk, and there's a lot of other issues that go along with it as well. So we asked some specific questions about, or Ipsos did, about some of the key issues within the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and it turned out that if you, and this is what the president's going to be talking about today, when you ask Americans the choice whether they want more access to imported goods coming into the United States or to protect American manufacturing jobs, 8 out of 10 Americans, not surprisingly, want to protect American manufacturing jobs. And 73% say that Congress should oppose the TPP or other trade agreements if they don't guarantee a level playing field by doing something that we've talked about before, and that's stopping currency manipulation from other countries overseas. And so there's strong feelings about this, overwhelming support among Democrats, Republicans, and independents. And so when you look at the debate in Washington, Craig, it's a little bit befuddling then to see that it's so close, and you have even a split in Oregon where Senator Wyden very aggressively pushing this. Senator Merkley is strongly opposed, and so you see that reflected right there in Oregon as well.
Exactly, and this poll that comes out with Ipsos there, broken down on party, Democrat, Republican, and it shows that, it has all the different categories, but quite frankly, total Democrat, 38%, total Republican, 34%, and they also mention, are they moderate? 15% Democrat, moderate Republican, 14%. So a very good cross-section of political, party with the survey. Interesting, though, how familiar with international trade deals, totally unfamiliar, 61%. So even though they're unfamiliar with the TPP, they still don't want jobs going away.
Well, that's right, and I think that most people, when they look at the communities, you can almost everybody in this country, I think, could identify someone they know or a family member who's lost a job because the production's moved overseas. And so even if they don't work necessarily in manufacturing themselves, they see the kind of impact that has on an individual, on a family, on a community, on public services,
huge.
and even on our country. And so it doesn't surprise me that Americans feel so strongly about this. What does surprise me, Craig, is that Washington is like moving ahead with this the Capitol Hill, and the concerns of these Americans. Many of them are getting left by the wayside. But I'll say this is going to be a very close vote when they start happening in the next week or two.
Scott, this is why I call on Americans, I call on listeners. The politicians need you, and Americans need people to stand up, make a phone call, send a letter, write an email, and get on the stick here, because politicians, it seems like they're just making this up as they go. They're not listening to Americans. Protecting American manufacturing jobs, 84% of Americans said, yes, protect American jobs, but yet the political powers that be are pushing through for this trade peace. Scott, we haven't even gotten to currency manipulation. We haven't even gotten to the jobs report, and you just put out another press release. Only 1,000 jobs for manufacturing across the nation comes out of that jobs report of 223,000. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a shockingly low number, but unfortunately it's consistent the last couple of months, February, March, April. We've seen virtually no job creation in manufacturing, despite, we've seen the rest of the private sector move ahead, and that is due to one reason and one reason only, and it's trade. It's the fact that we have more imports coming in. Our export performance hasn't been all that great, and so why in the world would we want to do another trade agreement that would make our trade position even worse in manufacturing? That's the question I ask, and these are good jobs. That's why we talk about it, Craig, is that manufacturing jobs are good jobs. They pay a family-supporting wage. They support other jobs in the community, and they are, but they're very hard to come by now. And it takes the right kind of public policies to keep them in the United States.
I can't even, you just get into businesses and your heart just goes out to people that are courageous enough to have companies that have manufacturing, that they have great trained workers and they want to hire more, but they can't because of all of the issues going on. Scott, we've got to get to a break. It's the Sunrise Show on News Radio 880 KCMX. We've got Scott Paul with us. He's the president, Alliance for American Manufacturing out of Washington, D.C., and his website, AmericanManufacturing.org. We'll be right back.
So get up. Top of the morning to you.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. 35 minutes after the hour, and thrilled to have on the program and welcome back Scott Paul. He's the president for Alliance for American Manufacturing based out of Washington, D.C. Their website is AmericanManufacturing.org. The jobs report is out, 223,000 jobs. But Scott, of course, and their crew, they found that only 1,000, can you believe that? Only 1,000 are manufacturing jobs out of the 223,000 jobs report released in April. And they'll probably readjust because they always do a month or so later. But Scott, it's great to have you on. The Fast Track Authority and this TPP. Talk about this with President Obama here in Oregon. It blows me away.
Yeah, it really does. So, this is a big, massive proposed free trade agreement that would include a lot of countries around the Pacific Rim. The president is going to Beaverton to join Nike executives, and Nike is going to make an announcement that if the trade agreement passes, they intend to create some jobs in the United States. I will just say that all that promise should be taken with a grain of salt, because this is usually how trade deals are sold, and a bunch of companies made a promise to create jobs after NAFTA, but they didn't. So I always say grain of salt, and And Nike's an iconic brand, has a lot of support, I know, even in the state of Oregon. But the facts are pretty brutal here. 1 million manufacturing contract workers around the world. Almost all of them are in Asia, and a very small employment and manufacturing footprint in the United States. And so, if the president's selling this idea that, well, international trade is good because we get cheap athletic footwear, it allows companies like Nike to be profitable, but in exchange we're going to lose a lot of factory jobs, I don't know that that's a trade-off a lot of people want to make.
No, not at all. And this poll out by Ipsos, it shows it right away. 84% of Americans, and whether it's 38% Democrat or 34% Republican, they're saying no, support and protect American manufacturing jobs.
That's right. And so the question was asked and answered. And so it's really remarkable that the president's going to try to make this case. And there is no question in my mind that a trade deal like this would help Nike be more profitable. But the question I ask, and I'm not asking this from a political point of view, is the problem in this country that our corporations are not profitable enough right now? I think a lot of them are very profitable. Or is the problem that we don't have enough good-paying, production jobs to create, recreate the middle class that we once had, or to do something about the trade deficit, which keeps growing? And those seem to be bigger problems to me, which is why this is such a controversial issue. And so it comes at a really critical time in the debate, and the Oregon congressional delegation is very divided on this.
It's interesting to see
what happens.
Well, it is, and especially if Senator Jeff Merkley is against it and Senator Ron Wyden is for it. But this fast-track authority, that the president is wanting, and it's very interesting to watch both Democrats and Republicans at the Capitol. We've already got the Constitution. We've got the separation of powers. It's there for a reason. The roadmap is there. Why does President Obama want a fast-track authority?
Yeah, well, it's a good question, and it can be a bit of a confusing issue. But here's basically what happens: the Congress will vote through this fast-track authority, or the TPA, to give the president the authority to negotiate this agreement, to submit it in final form to the Congress, and then the Congress will be obligated to vote on it without making any changes to it. All right? And so it's akin to this. I mean, if you ever have to sign an employment contract, it's like foregoing the negotiation with the employer, just basically saying, I don't want to see it until your final offer, and then all I can do is take it or leave it.
Exactly.
Well, that's not the way you really do negotiations, and so, for Congress to have a more meaningful role, it should maintain some of that authority. And look, our economy does what it does with or without fast-track authority. You can't tell a difference from, in our economy from a time the president did have fast-track authority to a time that a president didn't have fast-track authority. So it's not the most pressing economic issue. I'd much rather see our time and attention focused on having tax rates that make sense, rebuilding our nation's infrastructure in a smart way, things that are really going to create jobs here and really going to grow our economy.
Exactly. You look at Department of Transportation, our roads and bridges. Think what could happen there with all of the steel and concrete and site work. And then you go to the power grid. Look at all the good that they could do within our country, that we could utilize workers in each state. Those would be construction jobs, but still family wage job. It's amazing. Scott, do you have time to hold on? We have a break coming up.
But you bet. Okay, happy to do it,
Okay,
Greg.
Good. Because I want to get back. I want to circle around to this. If any of our listeners missed this poll that just came out, and then also talking about this jobs report that just is hitting the 223,000, but only 1,000 of those 223,000 jobs are listed as manufacturing. It is not right. It is completely lopsided. And when it comes to trade deficit, America is just being chipped away. And I want to see what we can do about it. Talk solutions rather than just complain all the time. Scott, so hold on a second. We'll come right back. We've got Scott Paul, the president for Alliance for American Manufacturing, on the phone with us. Their website, americanmanufacturing.org, and they are doing a great job because they are holding the president's feet to the fire. So far, they're reporting that only 376,000 jobs, manufacturing jobs, have been created out of the million manufacturing jobs that President Obama has said he wants. So let's come right back, and then more on the Sunrise Show with this. We've got Scott Paul on with us. Don't go anywhere. You can find us, of course, on the web, kcmxam.com, and we're streaming worldwide. So stay tuned. More on the Sunrise Show after this quick break. ABC Sports coming up, and then we'll return.
It's my life, and it's now or never. 'Cause I ain't gonna live forever. I just wanna live my life.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. 48 minutes after the hour on the Sunrise Show, News Radio 880 KCMX, and we're held Scott over. Scott Paul is the president for the Alliance for American Manufacturing based out of Washington, D.C., and their website, americanmanufacturing.org. And the tail of the tape, I always say follow the money. And Scott, it's amazing. Talk about this. Just report out 1,000 jobs, their manufacturing jobs, out of the 223,000 reported. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's what I would, it's a low wage recovery. So, and the bread and butter of our economy, even though it's a small part of the economy, although it's a very large part of the Oregon economy, is manufacturing, because they support other jobs in the community. You think if there's a factory, there's like a logistics firm, you get a grocery store, you get a lot of other stuff that goes along with it. And the challenge for manufacturing, obviously, it's affected by public policy, tax rates, skilled workforce, how good our infrastructure is. But one of the biggest challenges we face is international competition, very exposed to international competition. And so if the playing field is not level, we're going to be losing manufacturing jobs. If the playing field is level, we're going to be gaining a lot of manufacturing jobs. And we don't have a level playing field. And unfortunately, the proposed Trans-Pacific Partnership wouldn't give us one either. We'll have low-wage production platforms in countries like Vietnam. You have a country like Japan that very much restricts access to its markets, and there's nothing that that trade agreement is going to do to change it. But we will get a lot more imports in, and that means a lot more of our manufacturing jobs could be disappearing.
And we talked during the break, NAFTA is a failure. Interesting, you mentioned that the conservatives, they don't trust President Obama, and they've been complaining about his overreach, but yet they're going to just lay down and vote or side with him on a fast-track authority in this TPP. It makes absolutely no sense, and this is where Americans need to step up, call, write, send an email and say, we are not getting good service and our jobs are going away. It makes no sense. This poll is unbelievable. Protecting American manufacturing jobs, 84% of the 1,687 registered voters over 18 said, no way, protect American manufacturing jobs. It just pales.
It's overwhelming, and Craig, you hit it as well. It's conservatives and Republicans who believe this, along with Democrats. This is an issue where actually the American people are pretty much united, but the elites, and inside the Beltway, they have another point of view on this. But there is something, and I'm glad you mentioned this, that your listeners and conservatives can do. We have a petition calling on Congress not to do this. There's a conservative site called standunited.org, and also on our own website, americanmanufacturing.org, to send a message up to Capitol Hill. And I don't know how a conservative any conservative who has a problem with the administrative actions or the executive actions that the president has taken on immigration or with regard to the environment or the Affordable Care Act, why any conservative who had concerns about that would think that he's going to do a good job negotiating a trade agreement.
It almost to the point of I sit there and I'm shocked. I'm stunned that this is going on right before my very eyes, and it's almost like my first words out of my mouth are you crazy? I want to look at these politicians and look at them and say, are you crazy?
Yeah, there's a huge disconnect, and look, I'll say the thing that goes unsaid a lot, but a lot of this, there's a lot of big businesses that support the idea of free trade because they have these global production models, and they don't necessarily have any loyalty to American workers, but some politicians look and they're like, well, I might get some campaign cash if I vote the right way.
Oh my God!
On this, and so it's appealing to it. And I will say the other thing, you think about free market and conservatives. So the idea of free trade sounds very good to free market conservatives, but the problem is when you look at the details of this, this is not a free market agreement.
No,
because a free market represents a market that is unrestricted by governments, right? And
exactly,
so there's all sorts of problems. You have Vietnam that intervenes in its own economy. You have Japan that manipulates its currency. None of that is a free market method, and so there's no way a free market conservative should really be for anything like the Fast Track Authority or the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Exactly. We've got Scott Paul he's the president of Alliance for American Manufacturing, their website, AmericanManufacturing.org, and the great website. Go on to StandUnited.org and sign that, book around there. Scott, you mentioned currency manipulation, and it just gives me the chills because it is not a free trade agreement because exactly of currency manipulation, correct? And we're running out of time, but throw 30 seconds toward that.
You bet. It basically puts a tax on our exports, provides a subsidy for imports. At the end of the day, it means that we're losing literally millions of American jobs, and it's something that conservative economists, liberal economists, center economists agree on. We got to do something about it. This agreement doesn't do it. The time to act is now. So I hope folks will sign the petition, AmericanManufacturing.org.
Great. Scott, it's always great to have you on. This is powerful stuff, and I want to just inspire Americans to call, write, send an email, stand up for what you believe in, and, stand up for our country. And Scott, I appreciate you being on the front lines and doing what you do. So,
Craig, appreciate you having me on. Keep up the great work.
Yeah, great. Thank you, sir. All right, we'll be back. More on the Sunrise Show. The Bloomberg Market Update is next.